Everyone loves the goofy fun of SpongeBob SquarePants, but let's be real. Every character has at least one flaw that's impossible to ignore. From SpongeBob's refusal to respect boundaries, to Patrick's selfish laziness, to Sandy's arrogant need to always be right. These flaws are a big part of why these characters never really grow up. In this video, we're gonna be talking about the one bad thing about every SpongeBob character. SpongeBob SquarePants is obsessive and cannot respect boundaries. This might sound harsh for everyone's favorite fry cook, but it's an issue that shows up again and again throughout the series. SpongeBob often puts his own wants and curiosity before other people's privacy and personal space. While his endless energy and optimism make him lovable, there's a pattern where SpongeBob struggles to take no for an answer and has trouble understanding when he should back off. SpongeBob genuinely cares about his friends and has good intentions most of the time. The problem is that his enthusiasm sometimes blinds him to other people's feelings and boundaries. When SpongeBob gets fixated on something, he can become so focused that he ignores clear signals from others that they want him to stop. The most clear example of this behavior comes in the secret box. When Patrick shows him a mysterious box but refuses to show what's inside, SpongeBob's curiosity takes over completely. Any friend would naturally be curious, but SpongeBob takes it to an extreme level that crosses important lines. First, he tries to convince Patrick by sharing his own secrets, hoping Patrick will feel obligated to share his. SpongeBob tells Patrick about his job, his sleeping habits, his food choices, and even shows him his underwear, all while hoping Patrick will feel pressured to open the box. When Patrick maintains his boundary and refuses to show the contents, SpongeBob doesn't respect it. Instead of accepting his friend's decision, he escalates the situation. He tries to physically peek into the box multiple times, ignoring Patrick's clear discomfort and repeated refusal. Patrick becomes so frustrated that he has to threaten their friendship, saying, "If you ever come near my secret box again, we won't be friends anymore." For most people, this would be a wake-up call, but SpongeBob's obsession has grown too strong. That night, SpongeBob convinces himself that sneaking into Patrick's house while he's sleeping would be acceptable, because Patrick won't get upset and I'll have my own little secret. This shows how his good intentions have gotten twisted by his inability to let things go. He breaks into his friend's home wearing a mask and tries to take the box while Patrick sleeps. The break-in scene is played for comedy, but it reveals something troubling about SpongeBob's character. He creeps through Patrick's house, making noise and hiding when Patrick stirs. When Patrick unconsciously reaches for the box, SpongeBob actually replaces himself with it, showing just how far his obsession has taken him. When Patrick catches him and calls him the clam burglar, the situation has become genuinely serious. SpongeBob is behaving like a thief, even though he doesn't see it that way. The fact that it's his best friend's house makes it worse, because it shows how his obsession can override his respect for the people he cares about. The irony is that when Patrick finally shows him the contents, it appears to just be a string. SpongeBob's massive violation of trust over something seemingly meaningless. Later, we learned Patrick was hiding an embarrassing photo of SpongeBob, which makes the whole situation even more pointless. SpongeBob's difficulty accepting situations beyond his control shows up clearly in SpongeBob, You're Fired. When Mr. Krabs fires him to save money, SpongeBob's reaction reveals his struggle with not getting his way. While being fired would upset anyone, SpongeBob's response goes far beyond normal disappointment. He floods the Krusty Krab with his tears, making his emotional breakdown everyone else's problem. His reaction is so extreme that customers have to leave, and Squidward has to physically remove him. This is an inability to process that sometimes things don't go the way we want them to. When he starts job hunting, SpongeBob shows he can't adapt to a different workplace requirement. At every restaurant, he's given specific instructions about what to make and how to make it. But SpongeBob insists on making his own version instead. At the Weenie Hut, he makes weenie patties instead of hot dogs. At Pizza Pie Hole, he creates pizza patties instead of regular pizzas. At Taco Sombrero, he makes burrito patties that make a mess. This pattern shows that SpongeBob doesn't really want to work anywhere else. He wants every workplace to be like the Krusty Krab. Instead of learning new skills or adapting to new environments, he tries to force every situation to match what he's comfortable with. While this shows his loyalty to his original job, it also shows his inflexibility when things don't match his expectations. The situation escalates when his former bosses start fighting over him. SpongeBob becomes the center of a war between restaurants, with owners kidnapping him and chaining him to grills. This happens because SpongeBob's obsessive behavior creates chaos wherever he goes, even when people initially want to help him. In The Splinter, SpongeBob's obsessive denial creates real problems for everyone around him. When he gets injured at work, his fixation on hiding the problem makes a minor issue into a major health hazard. SpongeBob knows the splinter is preventing him from doing his job properly, but instead of seeking help or taking time to heal, he becomes obsessed with appearing fine. He ties his spatula to his nose rather than addressing the real problem. When Squidward points out that he should probably go home and take care of the injury, SpongeBob refuses to listen. His determination to seem okay leads him to let Patrick, who has no medical knowledge, treat the injury. Patrick uses a hammer to drive the splinter deeper and applies garbage as medicine. The splinter becomes infected and swollen, turning purple and oozing. By the time Mr. Krabs sees it, the situation has become disgusting and dangerous. When the splinter is finally removed, pus explodes everywhere, potentially contaminating the restaurant. SpongeBob's refusal to accept help didn't just risk his own health. It created an unsanitary situation in a place where food is served to customers. His obsession with perfect attendance put everyone at risk. While SpongeBob's behavior is problematic, it's important to remember that he's not intentionally trying to hurt anyone. His actions come from positive traits taken too far. His curiosity about Patrick's box comes from his love of friendship and sharing. His devastation about being fired comes from his genuine passion for his job. His refusal to acknowledge his injury comes from his strong work ethic. The problem is that SpongeBob's good qualities become harmful when he can't control them or recognize appropriate limits. His love of friendship turns into violation of privacy. His work ethic becomes dangerous stubbornness. His enthusiasm becomes obsession that hurts the people around him. This pattern affects his relationships in subtle but important ways. In the secret box, Patrick has to threaten their friendship just to get SpongeBob to temporarily back off. Even then, SpongeBob immediately violates that boundary when he thinks Patrick won't know. This shows that while SpongeBob cares about Patrick, he struggles to put Patrick's feelings before his own desires. Squidward's constant frustration with SpongeBob is about dealing with someone who consistently ignores social cues and personal boundaries. SpongeBob's refusal to accept that Squidward wants space is still a form of harassment that continues episode after episode. The show often rewards SpongeBob's boundary-crossing behavior, which sends mixed messages to viewers. In the secret box, he gets to see what's in the box despite his violations. In SpongeBob You're Fired, he gets his job back without learning to adapt. In the Splinter, the problem gets solved without real consequences for his poor judgment. This pattern suggests that persistence always pays off and that ignoring boundaries will eventually get you what you want. While the show doesn't intend to teach harmful lessons, it can give viewers the wrong idea about how to handle situations when people say no. SpongeBob's obsessive nature also prevents him from growing as a character. Because his behavior is usually rewarded or forgiven, he doesn't learn from his mistakes. He doesn't develop better self-control or learn to read social situations more carefully. Each episode tends to reset him to the same enthusiastic but boundary-blind state. In the secret box, he never reflects on violating Patrick's trust. In SpongeBob You're Fired, he doesn't learn flexibility or adaptation skills. In the Splinter, he doesn't learn to ask for help when he needs it. While this consistency makes him a reliable character for comedy, it also means he doesn't develop healthier patterns of behavior. It's worth noting that SpongeBob's flaws make him more relatable in some ways. Many people struggle with similar issues on a smaller scale. We've all had moments where our enthusiasm got the better of us, or where we had trouble accepting disappointment, or where we pushed too hard for something we wanted. The difference is that most people learn from these experiences and develop better self-awareness over time. SpongeBob's character stays frozen in a state where his positive traits consistently turn into problems because he can't recognize when to pull back. SpongeBob remains beloved despite these flaws because his heart is genuinely in the right place. His obsessive behavior comes from love, enthusiasm, and dedication rather than selfishness or cruelty. Viewers can see that he means well, even when his actions cause problems. The tragedy is that SpongeBob's boundary issues often work against his own goals. His violation of Patrick's privacy in the secret box nearly destroyed their friendship over something pointless. His inflexibility in SpongeBob You're Fired got him fired from multiple jobs he could have succeeded at. His denial in the Splinter turned a minor problem into a major crisis. If SpongeBob could learn to recognize when others need space, accept disappointment more gracefully, and ask for help when he needs it, he could maintain all his positive qualities while avoiding the problems his obsessiveness creates. His enthusiasm, loyalty, and optimism would still shine through, but they wouldn't come at the expense of other people's comfort and boundaries. These flaws don't make SpongeBob less lovable. If anything, it makes him more human. His struggle with boundaries and obsession is something many viewers can relate to, even if they don't like to admit it. The key is recognizing these patterns so we can do better in our own lives, learning from SpongeBob's mistakes while still appreciating his many wonderful qualities. SpongeBob's constant overstepping of boundaries is made even more difficult to handle by Patrick's lack of effort and responsibility. If you're enjoying this video so far, don't forget to subscribe to the channel. Patrick Patrick's star is lazy and refuses to take responsibility for anything in his life. While SpongeBob gets criticized for being obsessive, Patrick's problem is the complete opposite. He literally does nothing productive and expects everyone else to handle his problems for him. What makes this worse is that Patrick's laziness is about a deep selfishness where he actively avoids responsibility even when it hurts the people closest to him. Patrick actively chooses to let other people suffer while he relaxes. When situations require effort or commitment from him, Patrick either disappears completely or finds excuses to avoid helping. This is a pattern of behavior that consistently damages his relationships and puts others in difficult positions. The most obvious example comes from Rockabye Bivalve, where Patrick and SpongeBob adopt a baby scallop they name Junior. At first, Patrick seems excited about being a parent. He even insists on being the dad, while SpongeBob takes the mom role. They both enjoy the fun parts, playing with Junior, taking him around town, and showing him off to other people. But the moment real responsibility kicks in, Patrick completely abandons his commitment. The very next morning after they adopt Junior, Patrick puts on a business suit, grabs a briefcase, and announces he's going to work because he's the dad. He promises SpongeBob he'll give him a break when he gets home, then walks out the door. What follows is one of the most frustrating displays of Patrick's laziness in the entire series. SpongeBob spends all day taking care of Junior alone, feeding him, changing his diapers, cleaning the house, and handling every single parental duty whilst Patrick is supposedly at work. When Patrick comes home that evening, he's exhausted and immediately sits down to watch TV, completely ignoring his promise to help. This goes on for days. Every morning, Patrick leaves for work with his briefcase, and every evening he comes home too tired to help with anything. SpongeBob gets more and more exhausted, but Patrick just keeps making excuses. Tomorrow for sure, he says. I'll get to it eventually. Meanwhile, Junior's dirty diapers pile up everywhere. In trash cans, in the refrigerator, behind the wallpaper, even on top of Squidward's house. The worst part is when SpongeBob finally discovers what Patrick's work actually is. After Patrick breaks yet another promise to help, SpongeBob follows him and finds Patrick sitting under his rock watching TV all day. His work is literally just relaxing in his chair. His briefcase is full of donuts and ice cream. Patrick has been lying about working while SpongeBob exhausts himself taking care of their baby alone. When SpongeBob confronts him about this, Patrick doesn't feel guilty or apologetic. Instead, he gets defensive and claims he works overtime because sometimes he has to move the antenna or his butt itches. He acts like watching TV all day is genuinely difficult and that SpongeBob should be grateful for his efforts. The chaperone shows Patrick's laziness in a different but equally problematic way. When SpongeBob gets nervous about taking Pearl to prom and asks for advice for help, Patrick is completely useless. While SpongeBob struggles to transform himself into someone long, tan, and handsome for Pearl, Patrick just stands around making unhelpful comments. During the episode, Patrick shows no interest in actually helping SpongeBob succeed. He doesn't offer to help him with the costume, doesn't give useful advice, and doesn't even seem to care whether SpongeBob's night goes well. When SpongeBob is clearly struggling and needs support from his best friend, Patrick is nowhere to be found emotionally or practically. This pattern repeats throughout the whole series. Patrick consistently chooses the path of least resistance, even when his friends desperately need him. He's perfectly happy to benefit from other people's efforts while contributing nothing himself. I'm Your Biggest Fanatic demonstrates another aspect of Patrick's laziness, his complete lack of personal goals or ambitions. While SpongeBob obsesses over joining the Jelly Spotters and goes through increasingly ridiculous tests to prove himself, Patrick spends the entire episode doing absolutely nothing productive. At the Jellyfish Convention, Patrick's only interest is touching displays and following around Jeffrey the Jellyfish like a mindless fan. He has no hobbies, no interests that require effort, and no desire to improve himself in any way. When SpongeBob needs emotional support during his trials with Kevin the Sea Cucumber, Patrick is completely absent. Even worse, at the end of the episode, after SpongeBob has learned an important lesson about hero worship and personal growth, Patrick immediately starts dragging Jeffrey the Jellyfish around in a wagon. He claims to have learned that hero worship is unhealthy, while literally practicing the exact same behavior. Patrick learned nothing and changed nothing, which perfectly represents his approach to life. Patrick's laziness creates serious problems for everyone around him, especially SpongeBob. In Rockabye Bivalve, his refusal to help with Junior nearly leads to a disaster. When SpongeBob and Patrick are arguing about Patrick's laziness, Junior tries to jump out of a two-story window. They almost lose their adopted child because Patrick was too lazy to fulfill his parental responsibilities. SpongeBob consistently has to work twice as hard to compensate for Patrick's lack of effort, whether it's taking care of Junior alone, handling social situations without support, or dealing with any kind of challenge. SpongeBob can't count on Patrick for help. This puts incredible strain on their friendship and forces SpongeBob into situations where he's overwhelmed and exhausted. Patrick's laziness also prevents him from growing as a person. While other characters learn lessons and develop over time, Patrick remains exactly the same. He never faces real consequences for his behavior because SpongeBob always covers for him or forgives him. This enables Patrick to continue being lazy without ever having to change. In Rockabye Bivalve, even after SpongeBob explodes at him about his terrible parenting, Patrick doesn't really learn anything. He promises to do better, breaks that promise immediately, and then gets defensive when called out again. The episode ends with Junior flying away, and Patrick suggesting they have another baby, showing he hasn't understood anything about the responsibility involved in caring for someone else. What makes Patrick's laziness particularly frustrating is that it comes from a place of pure selfishness rather than inability. Patrick is lazy because he simply doesn't care about anything beyond his own immediate comfort. He's perfectly capable of action when it benefits him. He can run after Jeffrey the jellyfish or fight for the last donut, but he won't lift a finger when others need help. This selfishness disguised as laziness sends a terrible message to viewers. Patrick consistently gets away with putting zero effort into his relationships while still maintaining his friendship with SpongeBob. He faces no real consequences for abandoning his responsibilities or lying about his commitments. The show treats his laziness as a quirky personality trait rather than a serious character flaw that hurts people. Patrick's behavior also reinforces harmful gender stereotypes, especially in Rockabye Bivalve. He takes the traditional father role and immediately uses it as an excuse to avoid all childcare responsibilities, while SpongeBob, in the mother role, does all the actual work. This mirrors real-world situations where men use work as an excuse to avoid domestic responsibilities, leaving women to handle everything at home. The episode could have been an opportunity to show Patrick learning about responsibility and commitment, but instead it reinforces the idea that fathers are naturally less capable of childcare, and that mothers should accept doing everything themselves. Patrick's laziness becomes a joke rather than a problem to solve. Patrick's lack of ambition also represents a wasted life. While SpongeBob pursues his passions enthusiastically, Patrick has no interests beyond immediate pleasure. He doesn't work, doesn't have hobbies that require skill, doesn't try to improve himself, and doesn't contribute anything meaningful to his community. He is perfectly content to live under a rock, literally and figuratively. This might seem harmless in a cartoon, but it presents a troubling model for viewers. Patrick shows that you can go through life putting in minimal effort and still maintain relationships and happiness. He never has to face real-world consequences of laziness, financial problems, failed relationships, or personal stagnation. The tragedy is that Patrick has the potential to be a good friend and person, but his laziness prevents him from ever reaching it. In the moments of crisis that he faces, he occasionally shows genuine care for SpongeBob and others. But these moments are fleeting because Patrick won't put in the sustained effort required to be consistently supportive. In Rockabye Bivalve, Patrick genuinely loves Junior and enjoys being a parent during the fun moments. But when parenting requires sacrifice, routine, and daily commitment, Patrick immediately bails. He wants the benefits of relationships without any of the work required to maintain them. Patrick's laziness also makes him unreliable in ways that can be genuinely harmful. When SpongeBob needs support, Patrick often isn't there. When commitment needs to be kept, Patrick finds excuses. When problems need solving, Patrick disappears. This kind of unreliability damages trust and forces other people to either pick up the slack or do without help entirely. The most frustrating aspect of Patrick's character is that his laziness is entirely voluntary. He's not struggling with mental health issues or external obstacles that prevent him from being more active. He simply chooses comfort over effort every single time. This makes his behavior less sympathetic and more selfish than other character flaws in the show. Patrick represents the worst kind of lazy person, someone who could do better but chooses not to. He's intelligent enough to understand when his behavior hurts others, but he consistently prioritizes his own comfort over other people's needs. He makes promises he has no intention of keeping and expects others to be grateful for his minimal efforts. If Patrick could learn to take responsibility for his commitments and put effort into his relationships, he could become the supportive friend that SpongeBob deserves. His laid-back personality could be an asset if it came with reliability and genuine care for others. Instead, his laziness turns what could be positive traits into sources of frustration and disappointment. Until Patrick learns that relationships require effort and that other people's needs matter as much as his own comfort, he'll remain a burden on everyone around him. His laziness is a choice that consistently hurts the people who care about him most. Patrick's laziness leaves others to pick up the slack, much like Squidward, who clings to misery and blames everyone else for his unhappiness. Squidward Tentacles chooses to be miserable and blames everyone else for his problems. While many fans see Squidward as the relatable adult stuck with annoying neighbors, the truth is that Squidward makes his own life worse and refuses to take responsibility for anything. He's not just unlucky or stuck in bad situations. He's someone who's made being miserable his whole personality and uses it as an excuse to treat others badly. This is about Squidward refusing to find joy in anything, even when good things happen to him. He has trained himself to see the worst in every situation, and pushes away chances for happiness because being miserable has become his comfort zone. Squidward's misery is a choice that he protects like it's precious to him. When he gets chances to improve himself or his life, Squidward always chooses to stay bitter and negative. He's not a victim of bad luck. He's someone who has decided that being unhappy is easier than putting effort into changing his life. The best example of this shows up in episodes where Squidward gets exactly what he says he wants, but still manages to be miserable about it. In Squid's Day Off, Squidward finally gets what he's always complaining about: a day away from work in SpongeBob. This should be amazing for someone who never stops whining about his job and his annoying neighbor. Instead of enjoying his freedom, Squidward spends the whole day worrying about what SpongeBob might be doing wrong at the Krusty Krab. He can't relax or enjoy his time off because he's convinced that something terrible will happen. Rather than using his day off to do art, read a book, or do something he claims to enjoy, Squidward chooses to make himself worried and miserable. When he finally goes to check the Krusty Krab, everything is running perfectly without him. SpongeBob has handled everything well, and there are no problems. A normal person might feel relieved or even a little proud of their coworker, but Squidward is actually annoyed that nothing went wrong. He was so invested in being right about SpongeBob messing up that he's disappointed when reality doesn't match his negative expectations. This episode perfectly shows Squidward's real problem. He doesn't actually want things to get better. He wants to be right about everything being terrible so he can justify his miserable attitude. When he sees evidence that his life could be happier or that other people aren't as stupid as he believes, Squidward gets upset rather than happy. Squidward the Unfriendly Ghost shows another side of Squidward's commitment to misery. After an accident with SpongeBob and Patrick's cleaning, they believe Squidward has died and become a ghost. Instead of telling them the truth, Squidward decides to use it to his advantage, making SpongeBob and Patrick wait on him hand and foot. This should be a dream come true for Squidward, finally having power over his annoying neighbors and getting them to do whatever he wants. SpongeBob and Patrick go out of their way to make Ghost Squidward happy, bringing him food, entertainment, and treating him like a king. They're really trying to help what they think is their dead friend find peace. But even when he's getting everything he wants, Squidward stays bitter and mean. He uses his fake ghost status to be cruel and demanding rather than enjoying the special treatment. He could have fun with the situation or appreciate SpongeBob and Patrick's kindness, but instead he chooses to be as unpleasant as possible. When the truth comes out and Squidward gets caught in his lie, he doesn't learn anything about how his neighbors actually care about him or how being mean doesn't make him feel better. He just goes back to his usual complaints as if nothing had happened. The episode shows that even when Squidward gets exactly what he thinks he wants, he still chooses to be miserable. Krusty Love shows how Squidward's negativity affects his view of relationships and his own chances at happiness. When Mr. Krabs falls in love with Mrs. Puff, Squidward immediately becomes negative about the whole situation. Instead of being happy for his boss or even seeing this as a chance for a better work environment, Squidward assumes the worst about everything. Squidward's pessimism about love and relationships shows how deeply his negative attitude has poisoned his view of the world. He can't imagine that good things might happen to people around him, and he definitely can't imagine them happening to himself. His misery has become so complete that he automatically assumes any positive development will somehow make his life worse. Throughout the episode, Squidward makes mean comments and shows clear anger towards Mr. Krabs' happiness. He acts like other people's joy is somehow a personal attack on him. This is about Squidward being basically opposed to happiness existing around him. This pattern repeats constantly throughout the series. Whenever something good happens to SpongeBob, Patrick, or anyone else in Bikini Bottom, Squidward's first reaction is anger rather than happiness. He acts like other people's success or joy takes something away from him, when in reality his neighbor's happiness has no impact on his own life unless he chooses to let it bother him. Squidward's victim mentality becomes really obvious when you compare his actual life to his constant complaints. He has a job that pays well enough for him to own a house, pursue expensive hobbies like art and music, and live comfortably comfortably. He has neighbors who, despite being annoying, really care about him and try to include him in activities. He has opportunities for creativity and self-expression that many people would love to have. But instead of appreciating any of these things, Squidward treats his life like it's a constant tragedy. He acts like working at the Krusty Krab is slavery when it's just a regular job. He treats SpongeBob's friendliness like it's harassment when it's mostly harmless enthusiasm. He complains about his living situation when he chooses to stay in the same place and makes no effort to change anything. The truth is that Squidward could improve his life in many ways if he wanted to. He could look for a different job, move to a different neighborhood, or simply change his attitude about his current situation. But making changes would require effort and risk, and it would mean giving up his identity as someone who suffers more than anyone else. Squidward's misery serves as a purpose for him. It makes him feel superior to everyone around him. By being constantly negative and pessimistic, he gets to act like he's the only one who really understands how terrible life is. He treats his unhappiness like it makes him more intelligent and sophisticated than SpongeBob's optimism or Patrick's carefree attitude. This superiority complex is why Squidward gets so annoyed when things work out well, despite his predictions of doom. In Squid's Day Off, he's not relieved that the Krusty Krab didn't burn down. He's frustrated that his negative worldview wasn't proven right. He needs bad things to happen so he can feel smart for expecting them. Squidward's commitment to misery also prevents him from forming real relationships with anyone. His neighbors make repeated attempts to include him in activities and show him kindness, but Squidward consistently pushes them away. He sees every friendly gesture as an annoyance and every invitation as an intrusion. This creates a cycle where Squidward's negative attitude drives people away, which then reinforces his belief that he's alone and unloved. He could have meaningful relationships with SpongeBob and Patrick if he ever showed real interest in their lives or appreciation for their efforts to connect with him. Instead, he treats their kindness like it's a burden he shouldn't have to deal with. Even worse, Squidward often actively ruins good things that happen to him. When he gets opportunities to showcase his art or music, he often destroys them through his own negative attitude or unrealistic expectations. When people try to be nice to him, he responds with suspicion and hostility. When situations work out in his favor, he finds reasons to be unhappy about them anyway. This self-sabotage shows that Squidward is more comfortable being miserable than he would be being happy. Happiness would require him to admit that his problems aren't entirely caused by other people, and it would mean giving up his identity as someone who's more enlightened than everyone else because he sees how terrible everything is. Squidward's victim mentality also makes him incredibly selfish. He expects everyone around him to deal with his bad moods and negative attitude, but he never makes any effort to be considerate of others. He thinks his suffering gives him the right to be rude, dismissive, and cruel to people who are just trying to live their lives. When SpongeBob is excited about something, Squidward acts like enthusiasm is a personal attack on him. When Patrick does something silly, Squidward treats it like it's specifically designed to ruin his day. He takes everything personally and assumes that other people's behavior is somehow directed at making his life worse, even when most of the time they're not even thinking about him. This self-centered view of the world makes Squidward exhausting to be around. He sucks the energy out of every situation by turning it into another opportunity to complain about his life. He can't let other people enjoy things without making them feel guilty or stupid for being happy. The most frustrating thing about Squidward's character is that he occasionally shows glimpses of being capable of happiness and kindness, but he always goes back to his misery. In rare moments, he admits that he actually cares about SpongeBob or enjoys certain activities, but these moments are always temporary because Squidward is more committed to his negative identity than he is to actually being happy. Squidward represents the worst kind of pessimist, someone who uses their unhappiness as a weapon against other people and an excuse for their own bad behavior. He's not someone who's gone through a tough time and needs support. He's someone who has chosen to make misery his personality and expects everything else to revolve around dealing with his negativity. If Squidward could learn to take responsibility for his own happiness instead of blaming everyone else for his problems, he might actually become the sophisticated, cultured person he thinks he really is. His interests in art and music could bring him real fulfillment if he stopped using them as ways to feel superior to others. But as long as Squidward continues to choose misery over effort, he'll remain trapped in a cycle of his own making. His negativity is a choice he makes every day to prioritize being right about everything being terrible over actually trying to make things better. Squidward could have a much better life if he just stopped fighting so hard to stay miserable. Until he realizes that being a professional victim isn't actually making him happy or superior, he'll continue to waste his potential and push away anyone who might actually care about him. Squidward's misery is a choice, just like Mr. Krabs' greed. Both could be happier if they weren't so stubborn. But before I tell you about Mr. Krabs, make sure you're subscribed. Mr. Krabs' obsession with money makes him lie, steal, and hurt anyone around him, even his own employees. For him, everyone is just a way to make more cash, and he'll destroy anyone who gets in his way. His greed is toxic and harmful to everyone in Bikini Bottom. One Krabs Trash shows just how far Mr. Krabs will go for money. The episode starts with him trying to have a yard sale where he's selling literal garbage as expensive antiques. He lies to customers about worthless junk, saying a broken umbrella belonged to the Queen of Switzerland, and calling a toilet plunger a fancy old soup spoon. This is stealing. Mr. Krabs is lying to people to take their money. When someone points out that Switzerland doesn't have a queen, Mr. Krabs just lowers the price a little instead of admitting he lied. He doesn't care about being caught because all he wants is to make money. Things get worse when SpongeBob buys a soda hat for $10. After SpongeBob leaves, people start offering Mr. Krabs huge amounts of money for the same hat, up to $1 million. Instead of being happy for SpongeBob or letting him keep what he bought, Mr. Krabs immediately starts planning to steal it back. Mr. Krabs tries many ways to get the hat from SpongeBob. First, he insults SpongeBob, telling him the hat makes him look like a girl. When that doesn't work, he tries to trade other hats for it. When SpongeBob still says no, Mr. Krabs starts doing criminal things. At night, Mr. Krabs pretends to be a ghost to scare SpongeBob into giving up the hat. He makes up a big lie about the hat being cursed and belonging to a dead person named Smitty Werbenjagerman-Jensen. This is him trying to terrify SpongeBob into giving up something he paid for fairly. The plan falls apart when SpongeBob actually goes to the cemetery and puts the hat on a grave with the exact name. Mr. Krabs then does multiple crimes. He breaks into a cemetery at night, messes with a grave, and steals from the dead. When the real ghost of Smitty shows up with an army of dead people, Mr. Krabs fights them all just to keep the hat. After destroying an army of ghosts and running back to sell the hat, Mr. Krabs finds out that people discovered a warehouse full of the exact same hats, making them all worthless. All of his lying, scaring, grave robbing, and fighting was for nothing. But instead of learning anything about his greed, Mr. Krabs just moves on to the next money-making scheme. Penny Foolish shows how Mr. Krabs' greed works for even tiny amounts of money and how it makes him completely crazy. The episode starts when Mr. Krabs sees SpongeBob pick up what he thinks is a penny from the ground. A normal person might feel a little jealous, but would forget about it immediately. Mr. Krabs becomes totally obsessed. Mr. Krabs starts seeing pennies everywhere when they actually aren't there. In his car radio, steering wheel, and even the moon. His obsession with one penny that isn't his becomes so strong that he can't function normally. He almost crashes his car because he's so focused on something worth 1 cent. At work the next day, Mr. Krabs questions SpongeBob about the penny and demands that he share it. When SpongeBob says he doesn't have a penny, Mr. Krabs physically attacks him, shaking him upside down so hard that SpongeBob's brain falls out of his head. Mr. Krabs is willing to cause brain damage to his worker over 1 penny. When that doesn't work, Mr. Krabs builds an entire movie theater behind the Krusty Krab and sets the ticket price to 1 penny, hoping to trick SpongeBob into giving it to him. When SpongeBob says he doesn't have a penny, Mr. Krabs destroys the theater in anger. He spent way more money building the theater than he could have made from hundreds of pennies, but his greed has made him completely crazy. Mr. Krabs then puts on a fake charity show called Pennies for the Penniless, where he plays with SpongeBob's emotions by pretending to be someone who desperately needs help. He shows pictures of his money collection with a sad story about not having a penny. This is emotional manipulation designed to make SpongeBob feel guilty enough to give him money. Finally, Mr. Krabs breaks into SpongeBob's house at night with a metal detector to search for the penny. This is burglary, a serious crime that could put him in jail. When he gets caught, he admits to everything and begs SpongeBob for the penny. SpongeBob reveals that he never had a penny at all. He just picked up a piece of old gum. The funniest part is that the gum turns out to be a $500 bill, which SpongeBob throws away because it doesn't fit his gum collection. Meanwhile, Mr. Krabs ends the episode still digging holes around SpongeBob's house, convinced the penny is buried somewhere. His greed has made him so crazy that he can't accept reality. Krusty Krab training video shows how Mr. Krabs' greed affects how he treats his workers every day. The training video is supposed to be educational, but it's really propaganda designed to trick workers while making more money for Mr. Krabs. The video shows working conditions that would be illegal in real life as normal and okay. Mr. Krabs refuses to pay Squidward overtime and treats basic workplace safety as optional. The video teaches workers that asking for a raise will always result in being told no, and presents this as normal rather than unfair. The training video also shows Mr. Krabs' attitude toward his workers. He sees them as human resources that exist only to make him money. The video clearly states that workers are like body parts for the restaurant, treating employees as replaceable things rather than people with rights. Most telling, the video ends right before showing the Krabby Patty secret formula, cutting off just as it's about to share the most important information. This perfectly shows how Mr. Krabs views his workers. He wants them to do all the work while keeping them in the dark about anything that might give them power. The video also shows how Mr. Krabs has turned his greed into his system. He's built an entire business around using his workers and customers. The training video is designed to brainwash workers into accepting bad treatment while making them think they should be grateful. Mr. Krabs' greed creates a terrible work environment that hurts everyone around him. SpongeBob, despite his excitement and loyalty, is constantly underpaid and overworked. Mr. Krabs takes advantage of SpongeBob's love of cooking to get maximum work while paying minimum wage. Squidward suffers even more because he knows how unfair Mr. Krabs is, but feels stuck in the job. Mr. Krabs knows Squidward needs the money and uses that need to treat him badly. He denies overtime pay, ignores workplace safety, and shows no concern for worker well-being. Customers also suffer from Mr. Krabs' greed. He regularly tries to cheat them with false advertising, high prices, and sneaky business practices. In One Krabs Trash, he literally commits fraud by lying about the history and value of items. He sees customers not as people to serve, but as targets to exploit. Mr. Krabs' greed also corrupts the entire business environment in Bikini Bottom. His success with dishonest practices encourages other businesses to do similar things. He sets a standard where lying to customers and using workers is seen as normal business behavior. The most disturbing thing about Mr. Krabs' greed is how it stops him from having real relationships with anyone. He sees SpongeBob not as a valued worker or friend, but as a source of labor and potential money. He sees customers not as people to serve, but as walking wallets to empty. In One Krabs' Trash, Mr. Krabs has no problem terrifying SpongeBob with fake ghost stories just to steal his property. In Penny Foolish, he physically attacks SpongeBob and breaks into his house over 1 cent. These aren't the actions of someone who cares about SpongeBob as a person. They're the actions of someone who sees him as an obstacle to money. Mr. Krabs' greed also makes him incredibly two-faced. He demands loyalty from his workers while showing them none in return. He expects honesty from others while constantly lying and cheating. He wants people to trust him while proving over and over that he's completely untrustworthy. The sad part is that Mr. Krabs often ends up worse off because of his greed. In One Krabs Trash, his schemes result in him fighting an army of the dead for a hat that turns out to be worthless. In Penny Foolish, he commits multiple crimes and destroys property over a penny that doesn't exist. His greed consistently creates more problems than just being honest would have caused. Mr. Krabs also misses out on real happiness because of his obsession with money. He has loyal workers who care about him, a successful business, and a comfortable life, but he can't enjoy any of it because he's always focused on making more money. His greed stops him from enjoying what he already has. Mr. Krabs represents what happens when making money becomes more important than treating people well. He shows what happens when greed replaces doing the right thing, and when money becomes the only thing that matters. The show often presents Mr. Krabs' greed as harmless or even smart business sense, but the reality is much darker. He's someone who regularly commits crimes, hurts people, and destroys relationships for money. He's not a lovable penny pincher. He's a predator who uses his power to exploit everyone around him. Mr. Krabs could easily be a successful businessman without being greedy and exploitative. The Krusty Krab is popular and profitable largely because of SpongeBob's cooking skills and enthusiasm. If Mr. Krabs paid fair wages and treated people nicely, he could still make good money while actually deserving the loyalty and respect of his workers. But Mr. Krabs chooses greed over decency every time. He chooses exploitation over cooperation, manipulation over honesty, and quick profit over long-term relationships. His greed is a choice he makes every day to put money over morality. Until Mr. Krabs learns that there's more important things in life than money and that treating people well is more valuable than making maximum profits, he'll continue to be harmful to everyone around him. His greed doesn't just hurt others. It stops him from ever truly being happy or successful in any meaningful way. Mr. Krabs' toxic greed destroys everything around him, but it's not just money that turns people into monsters. Sandy's arrogant superiority makes her just as harmful, even when she's trying to help. Sandy Cheeks thinks she's better than everyone else. While fans love Sandy for being smart and strong, the truth is her intelligence has made her a total know-it-all who talks down to everyone around her. She acts like she's the only smart person in Bikini Bottom and treats her friends like they're idiots who need her to fix everything. Sandy genuinely believes she's superior to everyone and shows it constantly through how she talks to people, handles problems, and reacts when things don't go her way. Her arrogance makes her a terrible friend and usually creates more problems than it solves. Sandy, SpongeBob, and the Worm shows Sandy's arrogance at its absolute worst. When a giant worm starts eating buildings and scaring everyone in Bikini Bottom, the whole town is terrified and looking for help. Sandy immediately volunteers to handle it, but because she thinks everyone else is too weak and dumb to deal with it. From the second Sandy decides to go after the worm, she acts like everyone's fear is stupid and childish. When SpongeBob tries to warn her about how dangerous the worm is, Sandy basically laughs in his face. She treats his fear like it's ridiculous, even though he's actually seen the worm and knows how scary it is. Sandy's whole attitude during this episode is, "I'm from Texas, so I can handle anything that weak ocean people can't." She constantly brings up being from Texas like it automatically makes her better than everyone else in Bikini Bottom. When SpongeBob tries to tell her the worm is big, scary, and pink, Sandy dismisses this by saying, "So's Patrick's belly button, but I ain't afraid of that either." This response perfectly shows how arrogant Sandy is. Instead of listening to SpongeBob's real concern and fear, she makes a joke that basically calls him a coward. She's not taking the situation seriously because she doesn't take SpongeBob seriously. She sees him as weak and scared, so she assumes his warnings are just him being a baby. Throughout their whole trip to find the worm, Sandy keeps cutting SpongeBob off and refusing to listen to his warnings. When he tries to explain that she doesn't know what she's dealing with, Sandy gets annoyed and forces him to agree that there ain't nothing too big or too ornery for her to catch. She literally makes him say that she can handle anything, which shows how much she needs everyone to admit she's superior. When Sandy first fights what she thinks is the worm, she beats it easily and comes out bragging about how no worm is a match for me, because she's from Texas. She's so proud of herself and so sure she's amazing that she doesn't even think she might be wrong about what she fought. The funny part comes when SpongeBob has to tell her that what she fought was just the worm's tongue, and the real worm is huge beyond anything she imagined. But even then, Sandy only admits she was wrong because she's literally looking at a monster that could eat her in one bite. She doesn't actually learn anything about being humble or listening to others. Texas shows another side of Sandy's arrogance, her belief that her way of life is better than everyone else's. When Sandy gets homesick and starts talking about Texas, she doesn't just miss her home. She acts like Texas is obviously better than anywhere else, especially Bikini Bottom. Sandy talks about Texas like it's the prettiest place on earth and acts like living underwater is beneath her. Her song about wanting to go home is dismissive of her current life and friends. She's basically saying that nothing in Bikini Bottom could ever compare to Texas. When SpongeBob and Patrick try to cheer her up by making Texas-themed decorations and food, Sandy's first reaction is to laugh at their efforts. She doesn't appreciate that her friends tried to help. She finds their attempts funny because they don't match her superior Texas standards. Even when she decides to stay, it feels more like she's doing Bikini Bottom a favor rather than really appreciating her friends. The most telling part of this episode is how Sandy reacts when Patrick calls Texas dumb. She doesn't just get upset. She gets violently angry and chases them across town. This shows that Sandy's Texas pride is arrogance. She can't stand the idea that anyone would dare criticize something she thinks is perfect. Sandy's reaction is completely crazy. She's willing to physically hurt her friends because they said something bad about her home state. This is someone who thinks her way of life is so superior that any criticism deserves violence. She can't handle anyone having a different opinion about Texas because she really believes it's the best place on Earth. Sandy's rocket shows how Sandy's arrogance affects her science work and decision making. When Sandy builds a rocket to go to the moon, she treats it like she's the only person smart enough to understand space travel. She talks down to SpongeBob throughout the episode, acting like his questions and excitement are annoying distractions from her serious science. Sandy's attitude towards SpongeBob in this episode is incredibly condescending. When he asks if they can hunt aliens on the moon, she doesn't just say no. She talks to him like he's a stupid kid who believes in fairy tales. She says, "Aliens? Are you nuts?" Then lectures him about how he doesn't know the first thing about outer space. This is really arrogant, because Sandy is making assumptions about what exists in space based on limited experience. She's been to the moon before, but that doesn't make her an expert on all possible life in the universe. Yet she speaks like she knows everything for sure, dismissing SpongeBob's ideas without any real thought. Sandy's arrogance in this episode also shows in how she handles the rocket itself. She acts like she's the only person who can operate it safely, but then SpongeBob and Patrick accidentally launch it and have a successful space adventure. Her assumption that she's the only competent person around turns out to be wrong, but she never admits this. Sandy's arrogance constantly hurts her relationships with other people. In Sandy, SpongeBob and the Worm, her dismissive attitude towards SpongeBob's warnings puts both of them in serious danger. If she had listened to him from the beginning, she might have been more careful and avoided nearly getting eaten by a giant monster. Her condescending way of talking to people makes them feel small and stupid. When Sandy talks down to SpongeBob about aliens or Texas or anything else, she's not just sharing information. She's showing that she thinks she's smarter and better than him. This kind of behavior hurts friendships and makes people not want to share their thoughts or concerns. Sandy's arrogance also makes her a terrible teammate. In crisis situations, she assumes she should be in charge because she's the most capable person around. She doesn't ask for input from others or think that they might have valuable ideas. This means she misses out on important information and makes decisions based on incomplete understanding. In Sandy, SpongeBob and the Worm, SpongeBob actually has crucial information about the worm's size and danger level, but Sandy won't listen to him because she assumes he's just being weak. Her arrogance literally stops her from getting information that could save her life. Sandy's arrogance also stops her from growing as a person because she thinks she's already better than everyone around her. She doesn't see any need to learn from others or change her behavior. In episode after episode, Sandy makes the same mistakes, ignoring others' input, overestimating her own abilities, and assuming she knows better than everyone else. The worst part about Sandy's arrogance is that it's often disguised as being helpful. She acts like she's doing people a favor by taking charge and solving their problems, but really she's just feeding her own ego. She likes being the person everyone depends on because it confirms her belief that she's better than everyone else. In Texas, Sandy doesn't appreciate her friends' efforts to cheer her up because she's focused on how their attempts don't measure up to the real Texas standards. Instead of seeing their kindness and effort, she sees how they're not good enough to compare to her superior knowledge of Texas culture. Sandy's arrogance also makes her a hypocrite. She constantly criticizes Bikini Bottom and its residents for being weird or not good enough, but she gets violently angry when anyone says anything bad about Texas. She expects everyone to respect her preferences and background while showing no respect for theirs. Sandy's arrogance often makes situations worse rather than better. Her overconfidence leads her to take unnecessary risks, dismiss important warnings, and push away people that could help her. In Sandy, SpongeBob and the Worm, her arrogance nearly gets her killed and puts SpongeBob in danger too. Sandy represents a common problem with really capable people, thinking that being good at some things makes you better than other people at everything. Her intelligence and physical abilities are real strengths, but she uses them as reasons to look down on others rather than to help and support her community. The sad irony is that Sandy's arrogance often undermines the very ability she's so proud of. Her scientific work suffers when she won't listen to other perspectives. Her problem solving gets worse when she dismisses important information. Her physical courage becomes reckless when she won't acknowledge real dangers. If Sandy could learn to respect other people's intelligence and value their input, she could be an even better scientist and friend. Her skills combined with real humility and teamwork could make her incredibly effective. But as long as she keeps her arrogant attitude, she'll continue to create unnecessary problems and miss opportunities to truly help others. Sandy's arrogance is a big problem with how she sees herself compared to other people. Until she learns that being smart and capable doesn't make her better than others, she'll continue to be a condescending friend who creates more problems than she solves. Her intelligence could be a gift to our community, but her arrogance turns it into a wall that keeps her separated from the people who care about her. Sandy's arrogance causes problems, just like Plankton's obsession does. Plankton is so obsessed with the Krabby Patty formula that it's completely ruined his life. While fans think Plankton is a funny villain or feel bad for him, the truth is way worse. His obsession has taken over everything. He'll destroy friendships, hurt innocent people, and throw away any chance at happiness just to get that formula. He's not even a real person anymore. He's just a tiny green ball of obsession walking around. Plankton shows us where Plankton's obsession started and how messed up his thinking already is. In this episode, Plankton doesn't just want the formula. He thinks getting it will magically fix all of his problems and make him successful. He's built his whole identity around this one goal, and now he can't see any other way to be happy or successful. Throughout the episode, Plankton tries scheme after scheme to get the formula, and each one gets more desperate. He starts with a basic robot, then tries mind control, and finally decides to crawl inside SpongeBob's brain. Every time he fails, he gets more frantic and obsessed, showing that he literally can't handle failure or moving on from anything. What's really messed up about Plankton in this episode is how he sees SpongeBob. He doesn't think of SpongeBob as a person with feelings. He sees him as either an obstacle or a tool to use. When Plankton gets inside SpongeBob's brain, he's basically violating SpongeBob's mind and body, and he doesn't even care how wrong that is. His obsession has made him so focused on his goal that he stopped caring about other people completely. The episode also shows how Plankton's obsession has made him totally delusional. He really believes that stealing the formula will make him successful, but he never thinks that maybe his restaurant sucks because the food is bad or because he's awful to be around. His obsession has blinded him to the real reasons why he's failing and made him think there's some magical solution instead of just getting better at what he does. Plankton's army shows how dark Plankton's obsession has gotten by proving he'll manipulate his own family for his schemes. When Plankton Plankton gets his relatives to help steal the formula. He's not asking family for help. He's using them as tools. He doesn't care about what they want or if they get hurt. He only cares about how they can help him get what he wants. The way Plankton talks to his family in this episode shows how his obsession has poisoned every relationship he has. He doesn't talk to them like relatives he loves. He talks to them like employees or soldiers in his war against Mr. Krabs. His obsession has made it impossible for him to connect with anyone because he only sees people as useful or not useful to his schemes. What makes this episode really sad is seeing how Plankton's obsession has pushed away his own family. His relatives clearly don't respect him or take him seriously, and you can tell that years of his constant scheming has driven them away. He's given up real relationships for his pointless quest, and now even his family thinks he's a joke. The episode also shows how Plankton's obsession has made him terrible at planning and leading. When his family finally agrees to help him, his plan falls apart immediately because he's so focused on the end goal that he doesn't think through the details. His obsession has made him impatient and sloppy, which is probably why his schemes always fail. The Algae's Always Greener shows just how deep Plankton's obsession goes by showing what happens when he actually gets what he thinks he wants. When Plankton switches lives with Mr. Krabs using his machine, he finally gets control of the Krusty Krab and can access the formula. But instead of being happy, he immediately finds out that running the restaurant is way harder than he thought, and having the formula doesn't automatically make him successful. This episode is really important because it proves that Plankton's obsession itself has become the point. Even when he gets everything he says he wants, he's still miserable because his obsession has destroyed his ability to enjoy anything. He can't appreciate finally getting his goal because the obsession has become more important to him than actually achieving it. The episode also shows how Plankton's obsession has left him completely unprepared for real success. When he's running the Krusty Krab, he has no idea how to manage employees, serve customers, or keep the business running. He's wasted decades obsessing over stealing the formula instead of learning the skills he'd actually need to run a successful restaurant. What's most telling about this episode is how quickly Plankton wants to get back to his old life. Even though he has everything he thought he wanted, he realizes that the obsession itself was what gave his life meaning. Without the chase and the scheming, he doesn't know who he is or what to do. His obsession has become so much a part of who he is that he can't exist without it. Plankton's obsession has completely destroyed his relationship with Karen, his wife. Throughout the series, we see how his single-minded focus on the formula has made him ignore or take for granted the person who actually cares about him. Karen consistently helps him with his schemes, gives him advice, and supports him. But Plankton barely notices because he's so focused on his goal. The really sad thing about Plankton and Karen's relationship is that she represents everything he says he wants. Someone who believes in him, supports his dreams, and wants him to succeed. But his obsession has made him blind to this. He treats Karen like a servant instead of a partner, and he never seems to realize that she's the one good thing in his life. Plankton's obsession has also made him a terrible businessman. Instead of focusing on improving his own restaurant, making better food, or learning real business skills, he's wasted decades on pointless schemes to steal everyone else's success. His obsession has made him reactive instead of proactive. He's always responding to what Mr. Krabs has instead of building something of his own. The most damaging thing about Plankton's obsession is how it stopped him from growing or changing as a person. Every failure should teach him something, but Plankton never learns from his mistakes because he's convinced that the only problem is that he hasn't stolen the formula yet. His obsession has made him unable to look at himself honestly or improve as a person. Plankton's obsession also hurts innocent people who get caught up in his schemes. SpongeBob especially suffers constantly from Plankton's attempts to use him or manipulate him. Plankton never thinks about how his actions affect SpongeBob or feels bad about the harm he causes. His obsession has made him completely selfish and thoughtless. The saddest part about Plankton is that his obsession has made him miss out on what could have been a good life. He's clearly smart and creative. His inventions and schemes show real talent and technical skill. If he put that energy into building his own success instead of stealing someone else's, he could probably create something really valuable. Plankton's obsession has also made him paranoid and bitter. He sees enemies everywhere and thinks everyone is plotting against him. This paranoia has isolated him even more and made it impossible for him to have healthy relationships or find peace. He's stuck in a cycle of suspicion and anger that his obsession created and keeps going. Maybe most importantly, Plankton's obsession has stolen his ability to enjoy simple things or feel satisfied with small wins. He's so focused on the big goal that he can't appreciate anything else in life. This has made him constantly unhappy and unable to feel good about anything he does accomplish. Plankton shows what happens when you let one goal or desire take over your entire life. His obsession shows how chasing one thing can destroy everything else that makes life worth living. Relationships, personal growth, happiness, and peace of mind. He's become a warning about what happens when wanting something becomes more important than actually living your life. The really sad thing is that Plankton could still turn things around and build a better life, but his obsession makes him unwilling to try anything else. He's so invested in his current path that admitting it's wrong would feel like admitting his whole life has been wasted. So he keeps doing the same destructive things over and over, making sure he'll never find the success and happiness he says he wants. Until Plankton can let go of his obsession with the Krabby Patty formula and start focusing on building his own success, having real relationships, and finding meaning beyond his rivalry with Mr. Krabs, he'll stay trapped in this cycle of failure and misery. His obsession is stopping him from wanting anything good in the first place. If you guys liked our video, make sure to subscribe, and I'll see you in the next one.